You and I are not wired to become wealthy. We're not programmed to become wealthy. And we have habits that prevent us from becoming wealthy.
There's a difference between money and wealth. I was wondering if you could speak on that, because I'm sure with your techniques, you showed guys and women as well how they could literally reap millions of dollars in the sort of course of 12, 18 months. And yet you probably also saw people that could never keep it or didn't know how to deal with it.
95% of all of us get to age 65 and we're either broke or we're completely dependent on someone else or the government to support us.
Rich people buy assets, poor people buy liabilities, and the middle class buy liabilities that they think are assets.
The reality is we don't come with the right wiring, we don't come with the right programming, we don't know the right habits. There is a path though. The people that have figured out how to do it consistently have left clues, and I've been studying those clues, and I'm going to teach you what they are, and we're going to put them into action so that you can create wealth for yourself. You and I are not wired to become wealthy. We're not programmed to become wealthy, and we have habits that prevent us from becoming wealthy. Let me explain. We're not wired to become wealthy. Well, modern neuroscience is figuring out that we come what you might consider to be hardwired with certain ways of interacting with the world, ways of learning, ways of responding to situations and people. We were designed to live in an environment that doesn't exist anymore. We evolved to live in an environment that hasn't existed for thousands of years. Now, because human evolution works very slow, but cultural evolution and business evolution and the evolution of knowledge goes very quickly with people, now that we have things like language and computers and televisions, all that stuff's evolving faster than our hardware. Our hardware is not designed to deal with a modern society that has money and being able to accumulate money and being able to put your value into things that grow over time and to deal with long-term time frames and interest in things like this. So we got bad wiring when it comes to building wealth. Next, we got bad programming when it comes to building wealth. Most of us grew up with families that weren't wealthy. And even worse than that, we grew up with families that didn't think that wealthy people were good people. They had negative feelings toward money. They were upset at their bosses or whoever owned their company. We got a lot of self-talk in our minds that people that have a lot of money are bad, and that if money comes up in a conversation, it's going to cause a lot of conflict. I've read statistics that the number one thing that causes problems in relationships is arguments over money. So we got a lot of that programming as well. And then finally, our habits don't allow us to build wealth. Right now, each of us has habits that we do every day. Most of the things that we do are 99% the same things that we did yesterday. And actually, it's our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. They're all habitual. All the things that we've thought, felt, and did today are probably 99% the same things that we thought, felt, and did yesterday, and 99% the same things we thought, felt, and did the day before. We get into our comfort zones, we get into our routines, and then we just mindlessly do the same things. Now, if those things are not the habits and behaviors of wealth, then what are they? Well, there's something else, and we have to learn a new set of habits and behaviors. So, we're not wired for wealth building, we're not programmed to build wealth, and we don't have the habits to build wealth. And what's the evidence for this? Well, something like 95% of all of us get to age 65, and we're either broke or we're completely dependent on someone else or the government to support us. 95%. That's about 19 out of 20 people. So 1 in 20, definitely the exception. 19 out of 20, definitely the rule. Or if you've seen the TV shows or the documentaries or read the news stories about people that come into a large amount of money who didn't earn it over time, like people who inherit a lot of money or win the lottery, you've seen or read that in, sometimes estimated up to 80% of the cases, the people that have these windfalls are actually worse off 5 years later than the day before they got the money. Right? Now, how could this be? How could it be that people that get millions of dollars figure out how to lose it or get rid of it and are even worse off later on in their lives? It's just further evidence that we don't have the wiring, we don't have the programming, and we don't have the habits to build and keep wealth. I also want to mention to you that I don't think that most wealthy people came wired, programmed, and had the habits of wealth. In fact, if you just look at the math here and you realize that, okay, 1 out of 20 people winds up wealthy, there is a tremendous amount of luck and good fortune involved in those who actually do become wealthy. Now, they would probably never want to admit to this, but the reality is many of them were just in the right place at the right time, okay? If you randomly throw a bunch of people in a room and then randomly throw a bunch of money in the room, one of them is going to wind up with more than everybody else, okay? That's just the way things like this work. Think about this for a second. Napoleon Hill, the author of the book Think and Grow Rich, which is probably the most famous manual on how to create riches and wealth that's ever been written, he says right in there that he doesn't believe that 1 in 100,000 people truly understands the secrets of entrepreneurial success. So think about that for a minute. Not 1 in 100,000 really understands what it takes to create entrepreneurial success. So that means that there's a lot of luck going on out there as well. Now, sure, there are some families who have gotten really good at passing their fortune on from generation to generation, and they've developed great programming, and they've developed great habits, and they've developed great systems in their life to overcome their bad wiring. And we're going to cover some of that here. But just for now, I want you to know that the reality is we don't come with the right wiring, we don't come with the right programming, we don't know the right habits. There is a path, though. The people that have figured out how to do it consistently have left clues, and I've been studying those clues, and I'm going to teach you what they are, and we're going to put them into action so that you can create wealth for yourself.
So there's something to realize about money, and that is that money isn't the actual value itself. The money is the thing that we use as a way of storing up the value or exchanging it, but it isn't actually the value itself, right? A $100 bill from America, where I come from, I think costs a few cents to print. There's no intrinsic value in the bill itself. But if let's say that once a month, or let's say that every month you do 100 different transactions. All right, you buy lunch, you maybe go to the dry cleaner, you buy some books online, whatever. You do 100 transactions. Of the 100 transactions, probably of the 100 of them, you're going to use money for all of them. So there's 100 times of using money. But the next closest thing might be, let's say you buy a lot of books on Amazon and you buy, 15 books on Amazon. Maybe you do 15 Amazon transactions for a book. There's nothing even close in terms of how often when you do transactions, you do it so that your brain can get unconsciously linked to that thing being value. So we don't think of groceries as value. We don't think of books as value. We don't think of gas in the car as value, but we think of money as value because we use it in every one of the transactions. So we unconsciously become programmed that money is value. And then we start thinking about goals. People start thinking, I want to become a millionaire. I want $1 million. But that isn't actually what we want. You want to have a nice house that you want to live in, or a nice car, or you want to be able to provide for your children, or educate yourself, or go on vacation, or have more time off. There are more real things that we actually want. And this glitch, this is a really big deal, because if you're always focused on money and you unconsciously think that money is value, you're always trying to get money rather than trying to produce value and then build value and build assets in return. And so this is a key piece. And so we have to start watching where this is happening and then get more clear on what we want in our life and what the things we want and things we want to avoid. And then we have to go educate ourselves. If you want to make a lot of money in life, you've got to do what it takes to make that money. And many of those things are not comfortable. Many of those things are hard to do. They're challenging to do, but they're worth it, because if you learn to do them in a good, honest, ethical, kind of forthright way, who you have to become is, you have to find a higher version of yourself. You have to become a more self-actualized version of yourself to get over the fear of, insulting someone if you ask them to buy something, or the fear of making people uncomfortable if you're doing marketing, or the fear of getting someone upset when you just go and ask them, what are your needs? What are your frustrations, so you can make a better product? All these kinds of things. And I've grown in so many ways by learning these things. I What you learn when you learn to become more successful, and particularly when you learn about business, entrepreneurship, money, wealth, these lessons translate over into the rest of your life, and you can teach them to other people. They become these huge kind of gifts. What you learn at one point in your life, you don't realize it, but you're going to use it in other places. It's so easy to blow money on short-term things that aren't going anywhere. My equation for wealth is, first you have to learn about value. And to learn about value and values, you have to learn about how people value things, what the process is that people go through physically, emotionally, conceptually, to get value from something or to find value. And so you create value in some way, you produce value in the form of your product or service and your marketing. You help people get the thing that they want, and in exchange, they give you money for that in business. This is the basic business equation, right? And if you do a good job at that and you do that enough, you produce value for them, you get money in return. You get enough of it that you can then take it and go and invest it in something, right? So first step is value. The next step is money that you get. And then if you get some of that money, you need to go invest it in something for the long run. And Robert Kiyosaki has got some of the best stuff on this, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, cash flow quadrant. You know, rich people buy assets, or wealthy people buy assets, and poor people buy liabilities. And the middle class buy liabilities that they think are assets. It's such an interesting and subtle little point here, right? Yeah. So, you know, and I'm trying not to be critical here. This is a generalization. You know, we all make these mistakes, but unfortunately, a typical middle class person will go and buy something like a new car or, you know, God forbid, a new boat and think, I've bought an asset now. I just spent $50,000 on this boat. But they're not calculating that, you know, it's worth $30,000 as soon as they, you know, put it in the water for the first time, and then all this upkeep and whatever. And so the type of assets that appreciate and the type that throw off money, right, or throw off some other type of value in some way. So at the very least, you have to learn about buying things that become more valuable over time. And that is a very small subset of all of the things that are being sold out there or that are available on, you know, planet Earth. And so to understand wealth, understand money and wealth, you got to study, you've got to go learn about it. And there are a lot of people in the world who are brilliant, motivated, ingenious, well-practiced, who their specialty is taking money from people that have it, defrauding people in one way or another. And there are a lot of them. And it's easy to fall for something if you are not educated. And so, you know, like any other area, you've got to go learn about it. And so whether that be picking up real estate and saying, I'm going to go learn about investing in real estate, and I'm going to learn the difference between, you know, a piece of real estate that's more valuable than, you know, I can pay for it, or less valuable, one that appreciates over time, one that you got to be able to do the math and say, I'm going to buy a piece of real estate that, you know, throws off cash flow. So you have to learn the difference between something that's valuable and something that's not. And you could invest in real estate, you can invest in stocks or bonds or cryptocurrency or art, or there are lots of things you can invest in, but you've got to go learn about it. And then if you accumulate enough assets, diverse assets that appreciate over time, you achieve what I would call wealth.